I can see very high.
It's a new day on the Enterprise and Reed's having breakfast with Archer. Reed's rather on edge about the whole thing, but Archer just wanted to have a meal with one of his officers and admonishes Reed for trying to talk shop. It's all a little awkward, so it's somewhat of a relief when T'Pol interrupts to say we're approaching an uncharted star system. One of the planets looks worthy of a poke, but that'll have to wait as we're on the receiving end of quite a large kaboom. As well as bollocksing up a fair portion of the hull, the resulting mini-kabooms on the bridge also knock Hoshi on her ass. We're in the process of figuring out what happened when Travis reports something else just bumped into us. The something turns out to be a mine, a cloaked one specifically, and the yield matches the kaboom we just suffered. This one's attached itself in a place that could seriously fuck us up, but at least it hasn't detonated yet, so Reed volunteers to go and give it a poke. While he gets ready to do that, we have a look around us using the anti-cloak future tech we got a couple of episodes back and discover we're in very deep shit indeed. We'll have to worry about all that later as we've got more immediate problems. Reed's poking tells us the mine has locked onto our hull, but it hasn't yet registered the fact. Maybe drifting into it after the initial explosion wasn't enough of a bump to count as a contact. Either way, he starts fiddling to see if it can be disarmed. This is Starfleet, and we like to have options, so we're also looking at detaching that whole section of hull plate and letting it drift away with the mine still attached. It's a fair bit of effort, and will leave a portion of our innards open to space, but it's better than another kaboom, so we start work. As if all of this wasn't enough to deal with, we also have an incoming ship. It's the owners of the mines, presumably, as their ship is also cloaked, and more effectively too. They give us a call, likely to ask what the bloody hell we're doing, but we can't say for certain as the translator isn't working, and Hoshi's in no state to help out. This upsets the arrivals, and they poop in our general direction to show their displeasure. Sounds like a good reason for us to bugger off, so Travis tries flying us out of the minefield as gently as he can. Reed's still working on the mine during this, and thinks he might be able to disable it, but a sharp turn during our slow flight jostles things. Another of the tethers attaching the mine extends, piercing Reed's leg in the process and pinning him to the hull. Sounds bloody dangerous, so in proper Starfleet self-preservation style, Archer decides to go out there and take a look for himself. Hoshi wants to resume her post. Not an option, what with having a concussion and all, but Phlox offers to have call logs brought to sickbay. Somewhat brain-addled translations are better than none at all. Out on the hull, Archer's paying a visit to Reed. A quick check shows the injury isn't life-threatening, as long as you don't count it being attached to a large firework anyway, but there is a problem. Just slicing through the mine anchor pinning Reed isn't an option, as it'll trigger the kaboom. Archer isn't a fan of letting Reed carry on disarming it either, as the movement would bugger up his leg. The answer is Archer taking over the manual work while Reed guides him, and just to make it more entertaining, we're giving Reed some top-quality giggle juice first. Back in sickbay, Hoshi's finished her translations. She confirms what we suspected, namely that they're telling us to bugger off. Well, probably anyway, as her translation isn't 100% accurate. She says this planet is owned by the Romulan Star Empire, and T'Pol corrects her, as it appears the Vulcans have at least heard of Romulans. Archer knows the name Romulan too, having read it on the cover of a book in a future that no longer exists. T'Pol tells him the Romulans are a touch on the cautious side, but everything the Vulcans know about them is based on rumours. Regardless, getting the hell out of here would be smart, and Hoshi's working on a message to tell them we're trying to leave. On the plus side, Archer's disabled 2 of the 5 triggers with Reed's guidance. The current one requires a bit of fiddling, so Archer decides having a friendly chat with the guy trying to figure out how to defuse an alien mine and pass on detailed instructions is a smart choice. Reed thinks it's a shit plan but is overruled, so we get a discussion on why Reed was so awkward this morning. Long story short, Reed thinks things on the Enterprise are a touch more pally than they should be. He's a chain of command type of guy, and everybody on the bridge throwing out ideas when we have a puzzle strikes him as disrespectful to the captain. Archer explains that unusual situations call for unusual approaches, and experts who don't give their opinions are just fleshy paperweights. Reed doesn't seem convinced, though is smart enough to see that now is probably not the right time to start an argument. Things are starting to look up as Travis has extracted us from the minefield. Well, I suppose that technically depends on how you define the boundary of a minefield when we're carrying one of the bastards, but the point is we're no longer in danger from the others. Not that the one we have is safe yet, we're down to the last detonation circuit, and that means more chatting. This round focuses on why Reed joined the ship if he feels that Archer is a little lax on discipline, and more specifically why he didn't become a Navy lad like his dad and granddad. In short, aquaphobia, not the water itself, but drowning in it. His decision might have been influenced by a story about a great-uncle who had the same fear, but faced it and joined the Navy anyway. His reward was drowning in a submarine after hitting a naval mine, the irony not being lost on Reed. The great-uncle did his job, though, saving the crew at the cost of his own life, and Archer understands the point Reed is trying to make. It's a timely observation as our Romulan ship is back and it's brought a friend. This call is one we can understand at least, but it's the same message as last time. They want us gone, and a guy pinned to the hull doesn't dissuade them. They know we're almost ready to detach that section of plating, so either we do it or they'll just murderize us all. The good news is this coincides with Archer defusing the last trigger. The bad news is this starts the mine getting ready to kaboom anyway, so he turns the trigger back on again. It would appear there's a backup inside the mine that'll go off if the others are disabled, and it's too deep to reach. This gives Reed plenty of reason to start saying Archer should bugger off and let him die. 2 Romulan ships getting ready to start pooping are a pretty good argument, but Archer's still not having it. Reed's done debating and takes matters into his own hands quite literally. Disconnecting his oxygen causes Archer to intervene and stop it, then shunt over some of his own when seeing how much was lost. No time for being pissed off though, because Archer's had an idea. The backup detonator didn't immediately go off, and that means we've got some wiggle room. The kaboom from these mines is pretty serious, as shown by a bloody great big hole in the ship, but apparently the doors on our shuttles are reinforced and can take a kicking, so Tucker's sent to grab a couple. Archer's back outside again when we finally cut that segment of the hull plate loose. The Romulans are of the opinion this is our cue to piss off and make themselves known again. While they're making silent threats, Archer's cutting through the mine tether, pinning Reed. It starts arming again, and both Archer and a now loose Reed kick off and take cover behind shuttle door shields. They make it a fair distance away before the mine kabooms, releasing the sort of yield you'd see in a small tactical nuke. Rather than slamming the doors into Archer and Reed, the impact instantly turning them into chunky salsa, they're instead sent flying away at speed. The Enterprise is able to spot them despite their size and speed, and Travis manages to position the ship so they enter through the open shuttle bay doors. Then we remember the Romulans exist and run the fuck away. Being tossed around by a kaboom capable of destroying several decks and flying into a shuttle bay at high speed has not succeeded in killing either Archer or Reed. It has managed to land them on the doors to Launch Bay 4 when they came in through Launch Bay 2, so I'm choosing to imagine that they bounced around the room like a pair of squishy pinballs first. Still, it's better than getting vaporized, so we'll leave Reed to appreciate the value of a CO who doesn't always follow the rules, as we get ready to take another step on the long road. And just like that, the Romulans are here and gone again. How appropriate. On the plus side, Starfleet's had a chance to see just how unethical a cloaked minefield is, so they'll never engage in that sort of behavior themselves. The real purpose of the episode, of course, is as a chance to explore Malcolm Reed a little more. What we get is somewhat of a contradiction with the character to date. In this story, Reed says the crew of the Enterprise are far too pally, that he was trained not to fraternize with superior officers. All well and good if you consider Reed to be a stereotype of the stiff upper-lip Brit, but it runs contrary to previous data. In Shuttlepod 1 last season, Reed said he considers the crew of the Enterprise the people he cares about the most, those around whom he'd started to feel comfortable. Later that season, in 2 Days and 2 Nights, we saw him go out on the lash with Tucker, a superior officer. We could notch all of this up to putting a show on for the captain, I suppose, except for the fact that ship has already sailed. Archer was there in the shuttle on the way to Risa when Reed and Tucker described their joint holiday plans. He's already well aware that Reed fraternizes with higher ranks. To be fair, Reed's hardly the first Trek character to have conflicting behavior, so let's put all of that to one side and focus on what we get here. For a start, we're given an answer to why he didn't follow the family navy tradition. I regularly mock Starfleet personnel for having all the self-preservation skills of your average jelly bean, but Reed keeping the hell away from something about which he has a phobia, and that killed his great-uncle, seems pretty solid on the sensible front to me. Beneath the surface, though, if you'll forgive the pun, are a few thoughts of greater interest. First is that Reed spent years trying to force himself to acclimatize to water despite his fear. We've previously theorized on here that Reed might be our first inductee into the Shit Parent Support Group Enterprise chapter. His dad's attitude certainly hints at him being a bit of a wanker, and we suggested that some of Reed's behavior might be linked to an ill-fated attempt for validation. Reed trying to force his way through a literal phobia just to follow the family line would certainly fit with that theory. Such a perceived failure to join the Navy might also explain why Reed wants Starfleet to be more rigidly structured and militaristic, with a greater emphasis on discipline and rank. A spacecraft may make a pretty good surrogate for naval vessels, but any divergence in the working environment would be a reminder of the difference. That desire for validation might also explain another of Reed's actions in the episode. If his great-uncle, a man who died to save his crew, is a revered family hero, that might be part of Reed's motivation when he tried to do the same by removing his oxygen hose. A rather extreme form of seeking approval, to be sure, but one that's pretty much guaranteed to be successful. Let's leave the theorizing about childhood trauma and its legacy, shall we? There are some other bits of note we should get through. I made a crack about a tactical nuke not turning Archer and Reed into a red paste with the shockwave, but that might not be as bullshit as it looks on the surface. Now, this next bit comes with the caveat that I'm far from an expert on the topic, and anybody with more knowledge should share it in the comments, but from what I understand, the blast wave of an explosive is created by the heat causing pressure differentials in a medium such as air. The vacuum of space largely removes this medium, significantly lowering the resulting force. We'll assume any debris or possible radiation goes to the same magical place as most of the other explosions seen in Star Trek and not worry about it. The matter of how they landed in the shuttle bay is a bit thornier, though not without its own solutions. Based on Travis saying they were 100 meters away and then changing to 50 some 3 seconds later, Archer and Reed were traveling at roughly 35 miles an hour. That's quite the impact, but we can headcanon it away with a bit of thought. We know gravity on board is artificial and adjustable, so assuming it works in an unpressurized compartment, some fancy fiddling could have provided enough deceleration. We can't have just compliments though, so let's take a couple of swipes as well. We, just forgot we have a teleporter, did we? A guy pinned to a piece of hull plating we can detach seems like a pretty good opportunity to have used it. I know we could argue that it got fucked up by the initial detonation, but nobody even addresses the idea. Bringing it up could even have been an opportunity to reinforce what a new and relatively unreliable tech the teleporter is, saying the alien gubbins on the mine's cloak or whatever prevented us getting a trustworthy lock. Anything that gives us a chance to look at commonplace solutions in other Trek series and say, oh shit, that doesn't work here, would help to differentiate Enterprise from its predecessors. Elsewhere, we learned that the Football World Cup still exists in 2152, and those of you with an interest in numbers might note a problem there. The World Cup runs on a 4-year cycle, one established in 1930, and that would mean the tournament being held in 2150 and 2154, rather than the current in-universe year of 2152. That's assuming it's the same World Cup, of course, as it is possible the whole thing is a replacement. It's not like FIFA, the current governing body, is an organisation above reproach these days, so maybe Enterprise was being prescient about their demise in the next 100 years due to all the corruption. Who knows, maybe FIFA do still exist and just aren't involved in football anymore, the handing out of fabricated prizes being a more profitable business. That's enough piss and vinegar, so let's end with some points. Those of you paying attention will note Reed said there were 4 detonation circuits early on in the episode, only for that to be 5 when Archer's out there fiddling. A mistake, I hear you cry, except Reed also said there was a trigger in the magnetic tethers, so the additional tether that extended through his leg increased the total by 1. Either somebody was keeping track and thought it through, or that's an error with a very happy coincidence. We'll assume the former and give whoever caught it some points for attention to detail. End of episode.
I still don't understand why we need a translator for Porthos.
Because we're different species, obviously.
But we're all dogs.
No, we're not. He's a dog. We're space dogs. Specifically, we're a canine analogue from the planet of the Beneans in the Delta Quadrant. Oh, and we won't exist for another 200 years yet, so that probably causes some linguistic issues too.
I thought you said you were from Indiana, back in Season 4, Episode 2 of Deep Space Nine.
That was just to explain the accent.
Of course it was. That makes perfect sense.
Anyway, the point is that Porthos here don't speak the same language.
If we're from the planet Benia in the Delta Quadrant...
Actually, it's never established that the planet were called Benia in the episode. In fact, Neelix, who was a local expert, refers to it as the Benean planet. It were only called Benia by some schmuck on the official Star Trek website. But what do I know? I only fucking lived there.
I don't care. If that's where we're from, how are we speaking English?
We an Indiana accent.
Whatever.
Who says we are? That's what translators are for.
But if we've already got translators, then why are... Fuck it, this backstory is more trouble than it's worth. Woof.